against Bitcoin.
It's going up forever.
You're against Bitcoin, you're against freedom.
Global hash war. And at that time, people were saying, well, what if governments ban Bitcoin? What if, you know, and I said, no, the opposite is going to happen. Governments are going to embrace it and they're going to want to put it on their reserves. And in fact, they're going to be competitively trying to do so. And this is part of the game theory built into Bitcoin. And now the United States is entering into the global hash war. The El Salvador is already leading the global hash war. And other countries like Argentina and others are waking up to the fact that it's like, let me put this into really the context here for you, Alex. It's like when gunpowder came around. When gunpowder came around, the countries that adopted gunpowder stayed in the game, but those who did not got eaten by the countries that had gunpowder. Like if you don't have Bitcoin on your strategic reserve as a country, you're going to go fade away, you're going to disappear or be gobbled up by the country.
Yeah, welcome to Simply Bitcoin Live, your number one source for the peaceful Bitcoin revolution. Code-breaking news, culture, manic warfare. We will be your guide through the separation of money and state. In the cold opening, we had the legendary Max Kaiser on the Alex Jones show, and he's saying the quiet part out loud. He's talking about a coin, something that he coined. He calls it the global hash war. We call it the game theory, right? Bitcoin's game theory. It incentivizes, you know, it's really co-opted human greed in order to ensure its survival. And what you're seeing is not only in Russia kind of bend the knee, I think you're going to see China also too, but you've seen other countries. Kaiser mentioned El Salvador. You also have Paraguay. You also have the small kingdom of Bhutan in the Himalayas. It was discovered that they're mining with Bitdeer. And they've increased their hash rate. They increased it from 100 exahashes to, I think, 600 exahashes. Like, look at the jump of that. And that was after the halving, I believe. So they obviously have to be bullish about Bitcoin's future. And this is Bitcoin's game theory playing out. It's something that we were talking about, I think, a week ago or so when we initially reported on this, officially got into law. Like before it was like these bills were introduced. Now they were literally signed into law. So Bitcoin mining is coming back to Russia. And the thing I got to say about this is, do you think that Putin, you know, a lot of people feel strongly about him, but I'll just say this, like, do you think that, you know, he did this out of the kindness of his heart? No, he did this because he had no choice, or better said, he did this because he believed that this was the best choice. And that's what I mean about Bitcoin's incentives. That's what I mean about the game theory basically ensures that we've won. What we're up against is essentially their game theory is coercion. Like they have to coerce people to use their system. They have to coerce people to use their money. They have to coerce people to shut the F up and not speak and not say anything, like what's happening in the UK, right? Our system is just based on incentives, right? If you're a node operator, if you're a miner, you're doing all of that because you're pursuing your own incentives. And what happens with Bitcoin is that it's an aligned incentive system. And all of a sudden, it's very strange to hear that you, as a Bitcoiner in the US, have aligned incentives with the Russian government. Like, that is very weird to say that. In fact, you have aligned incentives with any Bitcoin miner anywhere around the world, right? You have aligned incentives with them. And that's very kind of like difficult to understand for a lot of people, especially coming from the fiat system, which is a misaligned incentive structure system. So we're going to talk about more about Russia legalizing Bitcoin mining. I think it's awesome. I think it's also proving what we've been saying again about the aligned incentive structures, about Bitcoin's game theory, and why I think Bitcoin winning is inevitable. This is the best money the world has ever seen. We're also going to talk about something that we explored on Wednesday. Me and Opti went hard in the paint. We said, look, like, I don't believe that, you know, Biden and now Harris winning re-election would be positive for the Bitcoin industry in the US. And after we did that episode, literally the episode after, we were a little bit excited because it seemed like the Mark Cuban and members of the Democratic Party, including Representative kind of from California, he was also present at the Bitcoin conference, wanted to sit down with members of the industry, and they did. But it didn't go according to plan, and Kamala Harris didn't show up. All she had to do was zoom in. It was like a phone call, and she didn't show up. And then again, don't pay attention to what they say. Talk is cheap. Actions are expensive. Pay attention to what they do. The same day that they signaled that, the Fed and other like government regulatory agencies actually sued one of the last remaining Bitcoin and crypto friendly banks in the US. And I think that the only reason they're even wanting to meet in the first place is because there's an election. I truly believe that if Biden wins another term or whatever, Kamala, it would be terrible for the industry in the US because they would just do what they're doing now. They would multiply that by like 5. Like they're showing that they're not stopping. They're showing that they're serious. Obviously, they don't want to lose votes on this issue. So they're kind of like signaling, but it's cheap signaling. So yeah, and I think that this is something that I was talking about with Opti and our guest for today, like before we went live. Like, it's very difficult to talk about politics sometimes. It's very difficult to talk about these issues because as Bitcoiners, we've always enjoyed being somewhat ignored, right? Like it's like, oh, this, at first they ignored us, then they kind of made fun of us. But you have to fundamentally understand the moment in history you are living through. You are living through the separation of money and state. Do you think the state, the matrix, the thing that funds the matrix, do you think that thing isn't going to fight back? Like, you're naive if you don't think that. So the reality is that there's 2 candidates that are pro Bitcoin, anti CBDC, and there's one candidate that is anti Bitcoin, pro CBDC. All right. So this election, I think, will have consequences from a regulatory perspective in the US. And I think that's something that people should understand to the core. Anyways, I do want to bring up our special guest for today, a legendary co-host who's always optimistic, somewhat optimistic today, not really.
You caught me in a moment. You caught me in the moment.
Of course, we got CJ in the house, and of course we have Optimus Fields. Man, Opti, like, I gotta say, what is Alex Jones like a theme of his show? It's like tomorrow's news today. Like,
Yeah.
Simply is like tomorrow's Bitcoin news today, bro.
Well,
Like,
hey, Nico,
straight up.
we don't call you Nico Jones for nothing. So, it's on brand. It's on brand.
Like, dude, didn't we not call it? Like, I feel like we called this. We absolutely nailed this call. And we've been talking about this theme for like 6 months in regards to Kamala and Biden and all that.
For a long time. And that's like the beauty of being a Bitcoiner and working from first principles and actually understanding what's going on. Even an 80 IQ like myself, understanding what's going on in the world is once you're able to see the world clearly, you have the predictive power of understanding what's going to happen. And you're like, the game theory is playing out in real time. You're like, I already know what's happening. I get the game now. And once you get to that point, it's very easy to predict what's going to happen. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball here. We're just like, seeing the moves being made, and it's like, yeah, it's very obvious what's happening right now. And hey, as a Bitcoiner, we're in a great position to continue to, in our opinion, spread the signal and hopefully expose more people to what is actually happening. And on that point, I am really excited for our guest today, CJ. Me and him have had some conversations in the past, but I wanted to bring him on to the live show because the live show does get more exposure. And I want you guys to hear more about what CJ's saying. Because again, like I just said, when you're a Bitcoiner, you have this power of predicting what's going to happen. And CJ literally predicted everything that was going to happen since the last time we talked. So we're going to get an update on what's going on in the market, talk about the Fed painting themselves in the corner, and then I'll, pick CJ's brain a little bit and hopefully get some more predictions of where we're headed. So CJ, how you doing this morning, bro?
I'm great. It's great to be here on Simply Bitcoin. You guys are the best. We are getting tomorrow's Bitcoin news today. Thank you guys.
Go.
Pew, pew, pew. Man, I'm excited. So CJ discovered some things in his research in regards to some of the numbers that they've been selling us. So I don't know if you want to give us a quick little sneak peek on what we're going to talk about during the culture, Opti and CJ.
It is lies, lies, lies versus fight, fight, fight. We as Bitcoiners need to come together for the good of the industry. Nico was on fire on that introduction. He is spot on what the future is going to look like. If you want your US citizen to be named next to Iran and all these other, North Korea, you look at some of these international exchanges. Anybody can use the exchange, but not if you're from the United States, not if you're from North Korea, not if you're from, you want that? Go ahead and vote for these leftists. Go ahead and vote for the Democrats. If you want anti-CBDC, anti-socialism, if you want to recapitalize the republic, then you vote conservative. It's that simple. Yes, we don't like some of the people on either side, but it doesn't matter. This is about the future of the industry. That is where they're drawing the line. And they are lying on every level, not just what they're saying with Kamala, oh, let's reset relations, and then not even showing up. They're lying about the numbers too. Inflation numbers are way off. And I think everybody who follows me and follows you guys understands that. But I've recently dove into the unemployment numbers, and they are just as bad, if not even worse than the inflation numbers. It is all a scam and a lie. I don't want to get pinged, but we're talking about like C19 level lies here. That's how bad it is in the industry. And we need to flush it all out. We need to drain the financial swamp too.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think you're spot on. And what I want to add to that as well is that, like, guys, this was never, they made it a political issue the moment that they started locking Bitcoin privacy developers in jail. We, as an organization, as a media organization, we've always remained neutral. And I remember that day, like, Opti and I just broke. Like, we're like, should we move to El Salvador? It's like, no, we're going to hold the ground here, this and that. And we're like, we have to bring this up. And I remember tweeting out, it was a couple months ago now, and everyone was hush hush. I remember saying, like, Biden winning re-election wouldn't be good for the industry. And the tweet blew up, got like 2,000, 3,000 likes. That's a lot of likes on Twitter, and at least for my account. And I was like, look, I obviously struck a chord here, and it's something very uncomfortable for a lot of people, because they're like, what do you mean? I'm tuning into a Bitcoin show. Like, why are you guys talking about this? It's like, we have upgrade as an industry. We have, like, now it's like we've gone into the mainstream kind of political discussion. And of course, you know, if we want Bitcoin to succeed, I'm not saying it needs a politician. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But if we want our industry to thrive, at least here in the US, like, if we don't all want to be digital nomads, like, unfortunately, it's gotten to the point where these types of discussions are important. So I'll say that. Anyways, lots to unpack and talk about. Before we get there, I do want to give a very special shout out, of course, to our lead sponsor. I'm talking about Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is the best place to buy your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. What does that mean? That means that when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes from Bitcoin Well straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. It does not give you the option to leave the funds on the platform, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state, because self-custody is the revolution. To get started, you go to bitcoinwell.com, you put in your email. The sign-up process literally takes 2 to 3 minutes. You get started. When you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn Bitcoin Well points, and you could redeem those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest. So we're going to do it for you guys here on today's episode. Every time you toss a coin into the Bitcoin Wishing Well, you have an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. First person to scan the QR code on your screen right now with your Lightning wallet address wins up to 500 sats. So head over to bitcoinwell.com today to get started. Use promo code simplybtc. You'll get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin Wishing Well on us, and support self-custody by default Bitcoin on-ramps like bitcoinwell.com. All right, everybody, let's hit the numbers. Lots to talk about.
The Bitcoin numbers.
All right, everybody, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Stamp your generational wealth using proof of work seed phrase storage onto a Stamp Seed titanium seed phrase storage kit. It's essentially a kit, a hammer, like with the letter things. There's a plate, and you literally stamp each letter into this titanium plate. Instead of writing down your seed phrase on paper. Paper is prone to water damage. It could be burned in a fire. You want your generational wealth to last generations, which is exactly why Simply Bitcoin recommends literally stamping your seed into titanium. And of course, you can't really do that anywhere else. You have to head over to stampseed.com today. And if you use promo code SIMPLY, you get 15% off anything on their website. So store your generational wealth properly. Don't lose your relationship with your grandchildren. Think in advance. All right, everybody. So I do want to get to the numbers, and then we'll talk about Russia and all that. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $60,190. Sats per dollar, 1,661. Block height, 856,053. Block height, 193,947. Halving estimate, March 23rd, 2028. Total Lightning Network capacity, 4,833 BTC. Capacity value, 290 million US dollars. Realized monetary inflation 1.46%, market capitalization 1.19 trillion, Bitcoin versus gold market cap 7.1%. In the grand scheme of things, we are just getting the party started. Anyways, pivoting to today's news, shout out to our boy Nick. Apparently he wrote this. Putin signs law legalizing cryptocurrency mining in Russia. Now, of course, you have to be inclusive in the wording, right? Cryptocurrency mining, that's what the law says. But since Ethereum migrated to proof of stake, the vast majority, like 95 plus of proof of work Bitcoin mining is Bitcoin. Like it's not really crypto anymore. Anyways, Russian President Vladimir Putin has officially signed a law that legalizes cryptocurrency mining in Russia. According to a report by Russian news agency TASS, the law introduces several key concepts, including digital currency mining, mining pools, and mining infrastructure operators. Mining activities are now recognized by Russia as part of a turnover rather than the issuance of digital currency. The new legislation specifies that only Russian legal entities and individual entrepreneurs registered with the government will be allowed to engage in cryptocurrency mining. However, individual miners can participate without registration provided their energy consumption remains within government set limits. Additionally, the law permits that trading of foreign digital financial assets on Russian blockchains. However, the Bank of Russia retains the authority to ban the placement of certain assets if they're deemed a threat to the country's financial stability. According to TASS, during a recent government meeting, President Putin emphasized Russia's needs to seize the moment in establishing a legal framework for digital currencies. He highlighted the potential of digital currencies to contribute to Russia's economic development, stressing the need for proper regulation and infrastructure. The law is set to take effect 10 days after its official publication, except for specific provisions that may have different implementation dates. Now, what's really interesting about this is you heard very similar language coming out of Donald Trump. And we played you guys during the cold opening a couple days ago when he went on Aiden Ross's live stream. He said, the reason that we have to do this has nothing to do with how I feel about it. It has to do with the fact that if we don't do it, China will. And essentially what Putin is saying is something very similar. If we don't seize this moment, another country is going to capitalize on it. This is what Max Kaiser was talking about when he's talking about the global hash war. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the incentive structure. The incentive structure is set up in a way, and this is also the theory of the sovereign individual. It's beautiful seeing all this play out, is you have nation states now competing in regards to how much Bitcoin they can acquire. If you have nation states competing, you win, right? You want nation states competing for you to be a citizen, for you to set up shop there. You want that type of dynamic. And it seems like Bitcoin is moving that forward. So this is extremely bullish news. It was a big deal when they announced the bills. It's an even bigger deal when now they've been signed into law, and that exactly happened yesterday. So overall, really good news. Doesn't surprise me at this point. I think I was really surprised at first with El Salvador. I was really surprised with Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy. We knew those days were coming. But it's still like, one thing is like imagining in your head. The other thing is like actually happening in reality. But, it's gotten to this point where we've been covering this for quite a while, Opti, like the Kingdom of Bhutan, El Salvador, Paraguay, Argentina, Trump at the Bitcoin conference, RFK at the Bitcoin conference, them moving the F out of the Overton window. Now Michael Saylor is mentioning Overton window, right? I got quoted also, second legacy media publication. I got quoted by The Guardian. So I got Financial Times. I got The Guardian. Well, what they're trying. I read that article, Opti. They're going hard in the paint.
Yeah, let CJ go, and I'll pull up the quote for you. So yes. CJ, jump in. What's your thoughts on this while I pull this up?
Yeah. So what's so important about Bitcoin hash rate is that it's part of Bitcoin being engineered money. And a lot of people don't get past like the absolute digital scarcity part. They get it, but then they stop their study there. Once you understand absolute digital scarcity and the effects of 21 million finite supply, the next thing to understand is the Bitcoin difficulty adjustment, because that's another aspect of Bitcoin being engineered money. And the way that it works is as hash rate goes up, then the difficulty goes up. And when the difficulty goes up, the cost of producing the Bitcoin goes up. And of course, the price of any commodity cycle, they say, is set at the margin. But whose margin? The margin of cost, the margin of the producer, right? When you go into a store and you go to buy something, you don't place a bid. The producer sets the price, and that price is based on their cost plus their marketing strategy. And it's up to the consumer. It's up to the free market price signal to say, does this deliver value or not? Oh, hey, here's some M&M Reese's snacks. It's $45. Oh, well, for $45, that's not worth it. I'm not getting the value from that snack. I'll do something else that's more fair value than something that's so overpriced. So when it comes to Bitcoin, what value does it deliver? Oh, I don't know. 24/7, 365 access to liquidity, zero counterparty risk, settlement anywhere in the world within 10 minutes that is secure and cheap. These are very valuable characteristics of money that deliver value to governments, to companies, to people. And the price that we have to pay to gain access to that value is always going to be relative to the cost of production, because it's the miners who are the forced sellers, right? We're stacking. We will never sell. We don't ever want to sell our Bitcoin. If you sell your Bitcoin, I'm sorry for you. You should never sell your Bitcoin. Miners have cost. Miners meet at the margin. They have to cover their costs. They are forced sellers of what they produce. And that's where the price is set. Well, as Russia gets in on the game, and eventually Trump came and said, if I'm president, the United States will be one of the lowest cost energy producers in the world, and the United States will become a Bitcoin mining powerhouse. What does that mean? Hash rate is going to explode. And even if we're involved or not, hash rate is going to explode. We can't be left behind. And as hash rate increases, every 2016 blocks, the difficulty will increase, which will push up the cost of production, which will require those miners who are forced to sell to ask for a higher price. And sometimes the bid might not be there, because we're so early in the marketplace that the marketplace doesn't understand the value that they're actually receiving. But for us Bitcoiners, when we see cheap Bitcoin, especially relative to its cost of production, it is a no-brainer that you should be stacking as aggressively as you possibly can. This is a positive feedback loop. We are now moving. When I first started in Bitcoin 10 years ago, this was like, people would laugh when you said, oh yeah, countries are going to, you're fool. You're whatever, man. Good luck with your magic internet money. Countries are now going to be in mining. It's over. It's done. This is the final shift. Get your shit together and stack as many sats as you can, because we are now moving into the final phase.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree.
Yes.
I couldn't agree with you enough. Opti, what do you think?
Yeah, wait, hold on. I just want to say, first of all, this is why I wanted to bring CJ on the live show, because he always just drops truth bombs on us. And not to rehash everything that was just said before I pull up these clips or these screenshots for you guys. We've been talking about this for a while, and CJ just laid it down perfectly. Like the global game theory, or as Max Kaiser calls it, the global hash war, it's happening in real time. And now everyone is being forced to embrace Bitcoin. Like we had with the cold opening, it's akin to what we saw in history. Like if you didn't adopt gunpowder, you're going to get left behind. Like this is what we're seeing right now. This is financial gunpowder, or as Sailor always says, like the world is going digital. And if you don't get yourself some digital gold or some digital assets, digital capital, like you're going to be left behind. And this is why Bitcoiners are always saying, maybe it's not the most, or maybe it's a little rude and it's not the nicest way of saying it, but if you don't adopt Bitcoin, you're going to have fun staying poor. And now everyone is waking up to this, and nation states are waking up to this. The institutions are waking up to this. And this is the final game here. Like we are in the final ending. Not only is the financial world like teetering on collapse right now, but Bitcoin is finally going from that gradually moment to that suddenly moment, and it's going to get adopted worldwide, and it's happening right now as we speak. So as we always say, if you've been watching this show and you only have like a little bit of capital in Bitcoin, like now is a good time to deploy your capital and get a big position in Bitcoin because things are fundamentally changing in real time. Okay, with that being said, you guys can find this article on The Guardian. It's called MAGA Hats, Panties, and the Carnivore Diet, My Bizarre Day at Trump's Bitcoin 2024 Speech. It is it's definitely tinged in like a anti Bitcoin, Bitcoiners are far right extremists kind of lens. But I was reading it this morning because David Bailey posted something. He's like, I got to fact check this article here. There was 8,000 people in the room. So I'm like, all right, let me see what The Guardian is saying. You know me, I love reading the fake news, corporate press, and seeing what they're saying about our industry, especially when you got the inside of being from, within the Bitcoin industry. You're like, all right, let me see how the legacy media is covering us. Anyways, as I was reading this, I found a very special quote here of our boy, our very own Nico. And it goes, Nico Moran, founder and CEO of BitVolt. First of all, I wish it said founder and CEO of Simply Bitcoin. But
BitVolt owns Simply Bitcoin.
I know. But, we got to get our brand out there. Anyways, Nico Moran said Bitcoiners had to engage in a war. Politics is downstream from the culture war. So if we want to win this, we want to win the culture war, he said. For Bitcoiners, that meant winning over the Bitcoin skeptics. And for Trump supporters, it meant beating the woke mob with overlap between those imagined enemies. Okay, though, hold on. I have another one here. To further illustrate this point, they literally quote tweeted Nico's quote, which isn't even a Nico quote per se.
It is a Breitbart quote.
It's a Breitbart quote. Which is like the irony is not lost on me. They like big quoted it, later on in the article. Again, politics is downstream from the culture wars. So if we want to win this, we want to win the culture war. Nico Moran, just love the marketing. Anyways, Nico, how do you feel about this?
I mean, dude, like we're winning hard. Like it's great. This is the second time legacy media has quoted me. I think the Financial Times quoted me when I said my bit at Bitcoin 21. Clearly it works every time, just getting under their skin. But yeah, this is information narrative trench warfare on the battlegrounds of the internet. And they don't like it when you point out the game. Like they don't like it when you point out how to win. And of course, like that obviously gets under their skin. If you read that article though, like, I mean, the amount of hate, the amount of we have David Bailey coming on Monday. I can't wait to talk to him about this. It's going to be great.
I think it's Friday though.
No, it's Monday. Comes on Monday.
Okay. All right. Either way, we're going to talk about this.
Looking forward to it. But yes, absolutely. I stick by what I said. This is how we win. We win through Bitcoin. Anyways, everybody, let's get to the news. Lots to talk about today. Let's check it out.
The Daily News.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation Devices. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US. It's fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a simple feature phone. So you will know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes. Experience the peace of mind that comes with taking ownership of your own keys. After a massive sellout during Bitcoin Miami 2023, the Passport is back in stock at foundationdevices.com. Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, completely air-gapped security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. If you're thinking about getting your Bitcoin off exchanges, this is the one for you. Check out the Passport link in the show notes below to learn more.
All right, everybody, we team up with specific Bitcoin companies. When we partner with them, we choose them very carefully in order for you to thrive in the separation of money and state. So we've had Bitcoin Well, automatic self-custody, we've had the Stamp Seed, and of course we have the Passport by Foundation Devices. The revolution is self-custody. It's like if enough of us do it, we win. There's absolutely nothing they could do about it. It drives them up a wall. They can't stand it. The way that you take self-custody of your Bitcoin is I recommend obviously using a hardware wallet. And of course, the best one to take self-custody with is the Passport by Foundation Devices. It's completely Bitcoin only. It's open source. They have a concierge service on their website. So literally, if you don't know how to use a hardware wallet, they will literally walk you through how to do it. So go check out Passport by Foundation Devices. It's absolutely awesome. Now, I do want to talk about this because I think it's a big deal. And this is something that we've been talking about over the last couple of days, which is the UK is like literally locking people in prison for what they're saying on the internet. And I'm not talking about violence. I'm not talking about threats of violence. Anything they deem as hate speech. And of course, they're the ultimate art, like they're the ones that get to decide what is hate speech and what is not hate speech. By the way, that is exactly why the First Amendment is what it is. Because the founding fathers knew, they had enough wisdom to realize that if government, if the state is the one that gets to dictate what speech is okay, what speech is not okay, they'll move the goalposts, right? They'll change the wording of definitions in order for it to politically benefit them. So it was a very kind of dangerous concept. So they essentially came to an imperfect solution because it is imperfect. And they realized, look, the state should have no authority to regulate speech because if they had some authority, they're going to abuse that power. And thank God we had a revolution here in the US because the UK, it's definitely doesn't look like it's heading in the right direction. So the gov.uk posted, think before you post. And they disabled the comments. And the reason they disabled the comments is because everyone was ratioing them, dude. Like absolutely wrecked. Cat Turd says, think before you become North Korea. Greg says, I was going to ratio you, but decided not to because it might be illegal and I don't want to get in trouble. And of course, they turned off the comments. And this is exactly why they're going after Elon. This is exactly why they're going after Twitter. This is why Maduro made Twitter illegal in Venezuela for 10 days, because they can't have people openly discussing ideas. Somehow that's a threat to democracy. All right, moving on to today's news, which is something that we started covering on Wednesday. Then we kind of had to walk it back on Thursday. But when you looked at the details, we're like, no, we don't have to walk this back. We were right. But essentially, this is an election year. Trump has obviously capitalized on Bitcoin and protecting the industry. So has RFK. He was never going to do that if the Biden administration did not create that opportunity for him, by the way. The Kamala realizes that a major part of her demographic are Bitcoin holders, people that like the industry, people that believe in the future of Bitcoin, right? So what are they trying to do? They're trying to benefit from both. I want the votes. I'm going to say Harris for crypto. I'm going to say all these nice things. Though when push comes to shove, we're going to keep the exact same policy in place. So there was a quote unquote a virtual town hall, virtual meeting with very important members of the industry. They had a quote unquote roundtable. It was set up by Mark Cuban, Anthony Scaramucci, and they had a Zoom meeting. Now, apparently, it didn't go very well. Here is a Fox Business headline. It says, crypto executives clash with Democratic leaders in heated Zoom meeting. Now, before I get to the details of that meeting, I do want to let's check out some of these tweets from notable figures in the industry. Here's Tyler Winklevoss, and he says, Tyler Winklevoss, by the way, was the person who teamed up with David Bailey, CEO of BTC Inc., in order to have a donation for Donald Trump. It was Gemini. That Winklevoss are known for getting that sweet Facebook money and aping into Bitcoin there and becoming billionaires in the process. And of course, David Bailey is an extremely successful entrepreneur, launching the BTC Inc. and the Bitcoin conference and all that stuff. And they teamed up and they did this huge fundraiser for Trump. So this is someone that obviously has his fingers on the pulse. The bank that they sued, the same day, by the way, that Kamala announced that she was having her crypto for Harris thing, or better said, someone in the community did, and they announced the town hall and all that stuff. That same day, it was announced that the Fed was actually suing Customers Bank. Customers Bank is the bank that Gemini, which is the exchange that both the Winklevoss twins founded, use. And the reason that they have to keep using different banks is because of Operation Choke Point 2.0. It's an original article that was written by Nick Carter.
And in that article, something that Opti and I we saw this. We didn't put it as elegantly and we didn't list it out for you guys like Nick Carter did, but we kept seeing the signs. We're like, wait, what is going on here? It's almost as if they're going after our industry. Then I had Caitlin Long on the show, and she was talking about her bank, Custodia Bank, which is supposed to be the first crypto bank in the US. And she told us, she's like, they denied me a federal banking charter. And that order came, her words, not mine, that order came directly from the White House. So, I mean, you know, the day that you, and again, it's kind of moving the goalposts. Like, it's like, oh, you don't actually care about this. You just want to get, it's an election year. This is an important topic to you. But when push comes to shove, you don't change your policy whatsoever. Now, I think, you know, they hold together this quote unquote roundtable. I think Winklevoss has a very good observation here. He says, can you explain why Kamala Harris didn't attend the crypto roundtable yesterday? I understand that she's on the campaign trail, but the meeting was virtual. All she needed was an internet connection. Technical difficulties? I mean, that's a really good point. Now let's get into some of the details of this meeting. It goes on to say, a virtual confab designed to repair relations between the crypto industry and the Democratic Party turned ugly Thursday morning, underscoring the uphill battle progressive crypto advocates are having trying to glean industry support for the presidential candidacy of Kamala Harris. The Zoom meeting was hosted by California Congressman Ro Khanna with the goal of mending fences during a contentious election year with a burgeoning industry that has been the target of a massive regulatory crackdown unleashed by the Biden administration's financial regulators. With Vice President Kamala Harris now at the top of the ticket, the party is looking to help Harris, its 2024 nominee, win back crypto votes from her GOP opponent, Donald Trump, who has recently embraced the industry and vowed to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world. Around 20 people were on the call, including Biden administration officials such as Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo, Deputy Director of the National Economic Council Leah Brainard, and Deputy White House Chief of Staff Bruce Reed. Christine Lucius, a senior advisor to Harris, was also present but did not speak. And it goes on to say, attendees with the crypto side include billionaire tech entrepreneur and crypto investor Mark Cuban, Anthony Scaramucci. It goes on. Instead of finding common ground, industry executives lashed out at White House officials, rightly so, largely over the regulatory assault from agencies like the SEC and the Federal Reserve. I didn't know the Federal Reserve was an agency. I thought it was an independent bank. Anyways, people who attended told Fox Business the meeting seemed like a replay of the roundtable Khanna hosted in Washington, D.C. last month when industry execs aired their grievances to a senior White House official about the unfair treatment they received under Biden. Quote, executives didn't hold back on telling the administration reps how much damage they've done to the crypto industry and to the Democratic Party with their actions against digital assets. Conway, for instance, aggressively expressed frustration that the administration has proved nothing but empty promises to the industry. Conway, an early Coinbase investor, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Another tense moment occurred when Adeyemo told attendees that banks and regulatories were not actively trying to cut the industry off from their broader financial system. I mean, CJ, we're going to talk about this during the culture. What does that sound like to you? It's almost as if they're, you know, I don't want to say manipulating information or data, but I think we've seen this before, haven't we?
That's right. This is narrative control. This is all about getting the people who have to go out there, work their 9 to 5, come home, take their kids to soccer and cheerleading and live life. And we want to live life peaceably. And, you know, I saw some comments earlier where people were like, oh, this guy's a Bitcoiner and political. How can I follow him or listen to him? I'm apolitical. I'm pro Bitcoin. I'm a one purpose voting, and that's for Bitcoin. And that's because Bitcoin is truth money. And those who like the truth and use truth within their lives tend to gravitate towards Bitcoin. Those who are ignorant or busy and haven't spent the time, or who have bad intentions, tend to go towards that CBDC side, the lie side of these things. I've never seen the divide as strong as it is. And it's to the point where it's just bold-faced lying at this point. And what concerns me in the long run for something like this might be like, oh, it's just political back and forth. No, I mean, when you have this amount of lying, there's a chance that people are going to lose trust. And the people who are with you might not lose trust, but if enough people lose trust, that's the difference between inflation and hyperinflation. They can keep kicking this can down the road as long as everybody trusts them. But the bigger the lies become and the more obvious the lies are, the easier and faster trust is going to be lost. And at some point in time in the future, nobody knows when, we will reach that threshold where most people will have simply just lost trust. And it's at that point, not with any big printing or any big quantitative easing program. It's with the loss of trust, we will move from inflation to hyperinflation. And we have never been as close as we are now to a complete loss of trust.
100%, 100%. And I just want to finish this paragraph because it's absolutely hilarious. In response, a crypto executive asked those on the call for a show of hands of whose firms have been denied banking services because of White House policies. According to two attendees, nearly all the industry representatives raised their hands. Despite the friction, Scaramucci told Fox Business he's optimistic. Yeah, I mean, like, it's like I'm optimism that, like, you know how what will really wake them the F up? Losing the election. You want to really, like, that is how you wake someone up, because there's feedback there, and now you have to pivot. You know what won't wake them up? Winning the election. They'll keep doubling down. Why do they have to change? There's no feedback that tells them they should change. So
the advice that they're getting from these people too, brand your shoes to be on the Fed. So these are entrenched people. And what happened with Caitlin Long and Custodia Bank is a travesty. It's illegal. That the reason they wouldn't give her the charter is because her bank would be fully reserved.
Of course.
And every other bank in that network is backed by a penny in worst case scenario to 10 cents, best case scenario. So all of the deposits within that system to the banks who had that master account access, all of those deposits would have went right to Custodia Bank, because who the hell wants to hold a bank deposit that's backed by a penny or 10 cents when you can go with Custodia and have it be backed by a full dollar? So their economic analysis, their mindset on modern monetary theory and how these things are supposed to work are diametrically opposite of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin economy, which is a fully reserved, over collateralized credit market. And that's what they're at risk here. They're at risk of losing control of the credit market. And I know we're going to touch on it later, but that is the source, the one of the main sources of motivation for these people to have to force to tell these lies and twist the narrative, because they truly and honestly believe that if we allow this innovation to become fully integrated, if we give Caitlin this master account, we could reveal the stupidity of all of our past regulation and decisions that we made for fractional reserve banking. So Bitcoin is bringing fractional reserve banking to the forefront, and Tether is proving with stablecoins that you can have fully reserved banks that are extremely profitable. Tether has like 25 employees and they made over $4 billion. They make just as much money as Morgan Stanley makes with 40,000 employees. And they have a much better, cleaner line. But one is a fully backed stablecoin model where they perform custodial arbitrage. And one is a fractional reserve banking model where they still perform custodial arbitrage, but all of the risk is transferred to the depositors, we the people. So this is movement, whether you're talking about dollars or Bitcoin or anything in between, this movement is about making the system more secure and being founded on asset equity like Bitcoin rather than fake fiat debt derivatives like the dollar.
Amen, man. Well, CJ's bringing the hot fire for you guys today on Friday. If you guys are enjoying the show, make sure to smash that like button. We're almost at 100 likes. Help us break 100 likes within the first hour of the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, Rumble, and X, there's about 1,000 of you guys watching live. So sit back, relax, enjoy the ride. We still have a lot of content to get to. I do want to finish this article. Last quote says, "This was a Biden administration meeting, but the focus now has to be on the Harris campaign and what they're willing to do." I mean, or crazy idea, you vote for the other guys that have already publicly came out and supported the industry. Like, it's so nuts to me, the cognitive dissonance. Like, it's like, dude, like, the only way the Democrats are going to learn their lesson truly as it relates, guys, we're not a political show, as it relates to Bitcoin, is if they lose this election. Clearly,
they're saying one thing, their actions are saying the other. What are their actions? Here is Tyler Winklevi. And he goes on to say, today, the Fed confirmed that Operation Choke Point 2.0 remains in full swing, providing valuable insight into how it works and verified that the Harris crypto reset is a scam. The Fed revealed all of this in a 13-page enforcement action it issued this morning against crypto-friendly bank Customers Bank. The punchline of this enforcement action is that Customers Bank must now give the Fed 30 days of advance notice prior to entering into any new banking relationship with a crypto company. Of course, the only way you can understand this is by connecting the third paragraph on page 1 of the order with the last paragraph on page 9. So page 1 says, whereas Bancorp has pursued a business strategy that involves offering banking services to digital asset customers, effective immediately, the organization shall provide the Reserve Bank with written notice 30 days prior to engaging it. So essentially, like, what is that but not attacking the business? Now, connect the dots with the Fox Business article. They literally made one of the most influential executives in the industry raise their hands and say, who felt like we're attacking you? And basically everyone raised their hand. What is that but not an attack? This is harder to make business. You're leaving essentially your business in the hands of the Federal Reserve. I thought the Federal Reserve was an independent bank. Like, I didn't know they regulated things too. This is crazy. How is this not a cabal? Anyways, it goes on to say, given that Customers Banks is one of the few only crypto-friendly banks remaining in America today, this means that the Fed is now a direct gatekeeper standing between crypto companies and their ability to get a new bank account. This is not how principles-based regulation is supposed to work. I don't think they're interested in that. I think they're interested, I'm going to say, in a central bank digital currency. They want a monopoly for it when they roll it out, and this is why they're doing what they're doing. But it's an election year, so they kind of have to walk it back a little bit. Anyways, this is not how principles-based regulation is supposed to work. The decision whether to bank a company should be decentralized across the entire banking industry, made by each bank at its own discretion. Now this decision has been centralized by the Fed and will be made by the Fed at its sole discretion. The choke point has been created. Excuse me. What exactly did Customers Bank do to earn this regulatory straitjacket and be forced to abdicate its own business judgment and decision making to the Fed with respect to banking crypto companies? That part is entirely unclear. The non-allegation allegations are so hand-wavy and vague they would make Franz Kafka blush. All we know from the 13-page order is that during the most recent examination and inspection, the Fed, quote, identified significant deficiencies. Not a single fact or tangible finding, however, is provided to back this claim. The public must take the Fed's word for it, essentially. Trust us, they say. How convenient. So exactly, how convenient. Right? How convenient that they're holding a meeting the same day. How convenient that, oh, we don't have to beg Biden anymore. Now we have to beg Kamala. Like, how convenient. Like, it's like, no, just say no. And I know it's very uncomfortable for everybody. It's just like, just vote for the people that say that, like, I'll protect the industry. Or you can beg. But clearly they're not interested in that. They don't give a shit. And I'm telling you, the reason that they don't give a shit, watch Wednesday's episode. Opti and I moved the fuck out of that over with the Overton window. But put it simply, the reason they don't care is because they want a central bank digital currency. You can't have Bitcoin in a CBDC. People are always going to choose a currency that is deflationary and that the government can't censor and steal and debase. They're always going to want to choose that. So if there's a competition, Bitcoin will win every time. They don't want a competition. And what is that but one of the most anti-capitalist things I've ever seen? That is some dystopian level shit. No, the Federal Reserve is going to dictate how banks in America do business with Bitcoin and crypto. That is so the institution that has everything to lose if we win, they're the ones that get to decide what the hell is going to happen. Like, that is gnarly to me. CJ?
Yeah. Well, you're on fire, and I couldn't agree more with you. I have a question for you. What about all the major banks that have paid hundreds of $billions in fines? Kind of seems like a good idea that they should be reporting who their customers are too. Right? Yep. I mean, they're the ones who've gotten found guilty and who've had to settle and pay hundreds of billions of dollars in fines and fees for breaking the law. Like Winklevoss said, what law has customers broken? We don't, there is no court case. There is no settlement. There's no precedent. And then you look at the major banks and you see all the laws that they've broken. Why aren't they being held to account? Well, if you can't answer that question, then you're just too naive, because Nico laid it out perfectly. This is an attack on the industry. This is a push towards a central bank digital currency. And Nico, Opti, both of you know, and probably most of the people watching this show know, a central bank digital currency, what it really is about control of prices. They don't want to just control the price of money with interest rates. They're not happy with just being able to state the interest rate. They want to tell you how much milk costs. They want to tell you how much you can buy. They want to tell you how much chicken costs, and they want to be in charge of all prices, because that gets them in charge of all resources. So forget about the free market price signal we were talking about earlier. They want the centralized socialist price market signal, which history has showed us never works.
And like, this is like the Overton window, like we're shifting and it is accelerating, and we're going to continue to shift it. And it's funny because during the culture, you're going to hear the same things about a different topic, but the behavior is still the same, right? But essentially, guys, you have to understand this, right? If Bitcoin is the money for capitalism, a CBDC is the money for communism. Just look at it from that parallel. Bitcoin or slavery, right? It's all the same, just different words. Holy shit, Opti, did we move that fucking window this week, brother? Real quick, bro, before we get to CJ.
Yeah, I'm going to make this quick because I really want to talk to CJ. I don't know if it was just us, but we definitely, leaped off the ledge. And hey, when we saw this news or the campaign and this Zoom meeting, you could say we were cynical, but we, again, predicted that this is what's going to happen. This is just hot air coming out of their mouths. This is them trying to retract, or what are they calling it? The reset, because they know they messed up and now they're realizing that they have to backtrack that. So I could probably keep going harder, but I think CJ and Nico killed it. Let's get into the culture, because I really want to get this signal that CJ is going to spread.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, let's hit the culture. Let's do this.
The Daily Culture.
Everybody, I do want to give a shout out, of course, to our sponsor, The Orange Collapse. Stack friends who stack sats. Join the 11,820 Bitcoiners that are currently on the application. It's a great resource if you're traveling, you move to a new city, or like you're traveling for a conference and you don't know any Bitcoiners. You pull up the Orange Pill app, and it has a really clever geographical feature, and it'll allow you to send a DM directly to Bitcoiners that are near you. It's also the #1 resource for Bitcoin only events. Like I said, if you're traveling, you go to a conference, and let's say there's no events, there's no panels that day for whatever reason, you pull up the Orange Pill app, and it will literally allow you to see what events are happening that day. It's also the best way to reach me directly. I don't really answer Twitter DMs these days or emails. So if you want to send me a question or you want to say hello, download the Orange Pill app and you could send a DM to me over there. So download the Orange Pill app. It is the #1. It is the Bitcoin social layer. Stack friends who stack sats. Check the QR code on your screen right now, or the link in the video description. Now, I was saying, while we were still on the news, I was basically making the case, CJ, that this behavior, right, of essentially obfuscating the truth is not something that is only happening as it relates to the regulatory environment for our industry. You have discovered, which does not surprise me, I might add, but you have discovered that apparently they haven't been exactly truthful in regards to other statistics. So could you get into that?
Yeah, well, and actually, before you go, CJ, I think I have the tweet here, so I do have your charts. Is this the Great Revision one? I can pull it up, and we can pull some charts up while you're going.
Yeah, you can pull up whatever you want. I'll start out like this, because the first kickback I get on this is usually, well, they're lying about the data, and the answer to that is no. And matter of fact, it is a miracle. I thank God every day that we have access to this data. We have an economy of over 300 million people. And somehow the US government is able to collect all of this data, and they share it with us publicly, even through API. So that's a miracle. This might be the only thing the government actually does right. They collect data accurately. It's accurate data. The lying part comes in when they take that data and through different methodologies that have changed from previous methodologies, they now plug it into a new equation. So when it comes to CPI, you can check govflation.com or WTF happened in 1983.com because that's when the change happened. They made a change to CPI in 1983 that changed everything. And it was a substitution-based change. Now, the substitutions really picked up in 1999. But what that means is this. The original equation was designed to measure a constant standard of living. That way, we as a people can understand whether or not our lifestyle is allowing us to get ahead or if we're falling behind. So it's of the utmost importance to understand the constant cost of maintaining a quality of life or a standard of living. With the new substitution-based methodology, which has led to the misrepresentation of the data, is because what happens is it's not a constant base. It's now a substitution based. So in other words, if your constant was filet mignon and filet mignon meat went up 10%, but sirloin meat only went up 2%, they have the ability to say, oh, well, because sirloin meat is only up 2% and filet mignon's up 10%, that person who eats filet, they're just going to buy sirloin. So their cost of living isn't going up because they can just buy sirloin. Yeah, but I want to eat filet. And I want to measure the constant cost of eating that filet. I don't want to switch from filet to sirloin, or I don't want to switch from buying a bag of chips that's 8 ounces to 6 ounces. There's all different ways that they're tweaking these numbers, and it's all through methodology. So I think we can be more confident in understanding the flaw in the system when we understand that the lying is not happening at the data level because they're collecting this data and it's almost miraculous they're able to do so and share it with us. But when they plug it into their new tweaked methodologies, which have the CPI has been changed over 16 times in a very short amount of time. And what you can see from CPI is that it's been coming down. But in this chart, you see manufacturing. Manufacturing is telling a different story. You can see in early 2023, we went under the 50 midline, which is typically that symbols that you're in a recessionary period. You can see back when Trump went in there was a lot of unknowns. We went under briefly, but came back up. And then during COVID, we came down below because everything shut down. And then we came back up. But look what happened in 2021. And it's important to note, they didn't raise interest rates until March of 2022. So, you know, this downward trend started in 2021 before they started raising interest rates, because most people attribute the fall of the economy, the demand destruction of the economy, to the raising of the interest rates. But manufacturing tells a little bit of a different story. The most important part to glean from this chart, though, is that back in 2023, we were in negative growth. So my thing is, and Opti, maybe you can pull this up. When you go into the inflation and you switch from a constant standard of living to this substitution-based measurement, what happens is the inflation rate is reduced significantly. So inflation right now is around 10%, and the government is saying it's around 3%. So the difference between 10 and 3% is 7%. And what happens is when you look at the economy, an important metric is called GDP. Oh, beautiful, right there. So GDP is gross domestic product. This is how we measure whether the level of production and consumption in an economy. So if an economy is growing, you see positive GDP. If an economy is shrinking, you see negative GDP. Well, if you use the real inflation rate to subtract the rate of price increases from the marketplace when calculating economic growth, real GDP is actually negative. So the government, by understating inflation, and they call it the GDP deflator, it's not exactly the CPI. There's a little bit of a difference there, but it doesn't matter. They're using too small of a deflator. So they're mistakenly accounting for that extra 7%, right? The government says 3%. The old constant methodology says 10.7%. There's 7% of inflation that these White House economists are actually attributing to the economy. So they're saying, hey, the economy is strong. We can keep rates higher for longer because the economy is so strong. Yeah, but that's because you are making the mistake of counting price increases for economic growth. And that's not the reality. The reality is that the price, if you take away the GDP based on real inflation on a constant measurement, GDP is negative. And that makes perfect sense. All of these things start to come together when you use the real numbers based on the original methodology versus these new substitution-based methodologies that are really just designed for the narrative. So it's really important to understand CPI is 10%. And by the way, back in 2021, when they said, oh, inflation almost went to a new all-time high, go take a look at the Gulflation chart. CPI was at an all-time high. We did have all-time high inflation after they printed all of that money in COVID. And we're heading towards wave 2 now because there's $6 trillion of buying power on the sidelines. They're all waiting to buy the dip, right? When Bitcoin goes under 50, I'll buy the dip. What did Dave Portnoy say? When Bitcoin hits 40, I'll buy it. Well, did he buy it at 49? No, because then he started waiting for 30. Us Bitcoiners, we know how this works. You always buy because you buy discounts. You buy when Bitcoin is cheap. And right now, Bitcoin is the cheapest it's ever been. And by the way, we just had a complete washout in the marketplace based on the economic data we just talked about, right? So GDP, CPI, jobs data, which, as I was saying earlier, is even worse. They got the unemployment at 4%. When you go back to the older methodology, unemployment is upwards of 7%. The year-over-year growth of unemployment triggered what they call the SAM rule, which is that if year-over-year growth is greater than 0.5%, then what happens is every single time in history that's happened, we've entered into a recession. So all the recession signals are going off, and then analysts are looking back at government GDP and saying, well, hey, these are just fake recession signals. No, those are actually accurate, real recession signals. It's your lying about the CPI and your changes in methodology to manipulate the narrative that are leading to the misunderstanding in the broader marketplace. But the smarter money managers, the people who see what's really going on here, they know exactly what's happening and they're preparing for what comes next. The CME Fed Watch has the percentage chance of rate cuts in September being 100%. Now the argument isn't, are they going to cut or not? The argument has now become more, are they going to cut by 25 basis points or 50 basis points? Or is something else going to snap in the market? We saw the yen carry trade start to break down the other day. And by the way, the yen carry trade, when the Japanese central bank raised interest rates by 0.25 basis points, so less, a quarter of 1%, caused this huge sell-off and liquidation, this forced selling, this deleveraging within the marketplace for a quarter of 1%. And a lot of people are saying, oh, the Fed needs to come out and lower the interest rate. But what caused that sell-off and deleveraging was the shrinking of the spread between the cost to borrow the yen and what you can earn with the USD. So if the Fed comes out and lowers the interest rate, that also shrinks the spread. So we could see more forced deleveraging or even forced liquidations. I did see JP Morgan come out and say that they think that the yen carry trade has unwound to the tune of about 75%. So maybe 25% of that leverage is still left in the market with people with maybe had a stronger balance sheet, but that risk is still there. And rates are going down in September. So when rates go down in September, $6 trillion is on the sideline. It's waiting to bid. Well, guess what? The recession was masked by the lying of the data. Everybody waited for a recession to buy the dip. But if you were looking at the real data, we've been in a recession since 2023. So you should have been buying the dip since 2023. What we're going to find out is that you missed your chance to buy the dip. And now they're going to lower interest rates. And when those interest rates go down, all of that money that ran into those interest rates to get your 5% with principal protection, which is a joke when Bitcoin's got 50% CAGR. What the hell are you looking at 5% for? That's Bitcoin's delivering at 10x the rate over 10 years. Can you do math? Well, no, I guess these people can't. And what's happening is when that rate goes down, all of this money on the sideline that was waiting to buy the dip, but never bought the dip. They couldn't execute. It didn't go down low enough for them. The news never said that we were in a recession. They didn't, all the signals they were looking for never came. Well, as all that money races out of these money market funds, guess where it's going to go? It's going to go right back into assets. It's going to go back into Bitcoin, the fastest horse in the race. It's going to go back into real estate. It's going to go back into stocks. It's going to go back into anything that can't be printed. And the harder it is to print it, the faster it's going to go up in price. And that is going to happen on the back of probably quantitative easing, increased deficit spending. So we're right now, the interest rate is high, and that's causing the economy to slow. That causes what they call demand destruction. So demand destruction creates a negative price pressure. Well, because they raise the interest rate so high, everybody knows that the government's interest rate expense is the highest it's ever been. It actually costs more to service our debt than it does to pay for our military. And we have by far the largest military budget in the world. And it costs more to finance our debt. So what happens is that creates a positive price pressure. Now, when they lower interest rates, the economy, the demand destruction is going to disappear. The money's going to come back funneling in. That creates a positive price pressure. Meanwhile, the government is still deficit spending. That's a positive price pressure. So right now we have two price pressures. One kind of offsets the other, but the positive price pressure is still winning because the demand destruction is so muted. But in the future, we're going to have positive price pressure from all of the trillions of dollars on the sidelines running back into assets since they can't get the yield anymore, plus the government deficit spending, creating the positive price. Prices are going to go up much faster than people anticipate, much faster than we saw during COVID. And by the way, the last time this happened, Bitcoin dropped from $9,000 all the way down to $3,000 when we had that liquidity crisis deleveraging event. Well, the yen carry trade just blew up. We had a deleveraging event. We had a liquidity crisis. Bitcoin did not even go below. I mean, it went barely below 50,000, right? So barely below 50. It's basically held $50,000 at this point. And what happened last time is Bitcoin went from $3,000. It went over 20x to 60,000. It went even higher, but just call it 20x for the sake of math. Well, as we get into a season of lowering interest rates and seeing all the effects of that take place, plus government increasing deficit spending to support the economy that they just destroyed, right? The Fed did demand destruction. They destroyed the economy. They targeted the economy. They should have been fighting the currency, but instead they chose to fight the economy. Now the government's going to have to spend even more money to build up the economy that they just destroyed. And then we're going to see double positive price pressure on the back of the same policies that pushed Bitcoin from 3,000 to 60,000. Well, guess what? That same measured move from 3,000 to 60,000, that 20x, that's like Bitcoin going from 50,000 to $1 million.
But what about the diminishing returns aspect of it, right? Because it is a lot harder from just from numerically, market cap wise. What would you say to that?
Well, the first thing is one of the statistics that you showed earlier was that we were around 7% of gold's market cap. So if Bitcoin were to go to between 700 and $1 million, that puts us on par with gold's market cap. So talking about the limits of market capitalization and valuation, this type of move from 50,000 to $1 million basically just makes us even with gold. And gold is old. Gold has been demonetized. Bitcoin is being monetized right now as we speak. So it's in the opposite. It's poised to absolutely flip that market cap, and it's a perfectly realistic move based on the amount of printing that they're going to have to do. Now, diminishing returns is different because I don't like to call it diminishing returns. I like to call it diminishing premiums. And if you follow me along Bitcoin Fair Value, where we track Bitcoin's price relative to its cost of production, what we're seeing is diminishing premiums, not necessarily diminishing returns. So as we move into a global hash war and the cost of production goes up significantly, then you could still have a diminished premium. Like the last cycle, the cost of production was around 40,000. Just call it like 35,000, and we went to 70. So it was like 100% premium. But the previous 2016 halving cycle premium of the market price relative to its cost was 400%. So, and then before that, it was like 600%. So we went from 600% to 400%, diminishing premiums to cost. And the reason that's happening is because of the public miner companies. And in the old days, we had OG Bitcoiners who were just going to hold, and they only sold to maybe buy something or whatnot. But now that these companies are public miners, these public miners have a fiduciary responsibility to lock in profits. So when the price starts to go up above the cost of production significantly, these miners start selling their treasury. Because remember, they're forced sellers. And if they're not selling their treasury because the price is under the cost like it is today, if they're forced to sell, they're losing money. And if they can hold, then they have to use cash flow or use debt to make it through to the point where the price goes back above the cost. So I think we're going to continue to see diminishing price premiums relative to cost of production. But at the same time, we're going to see an explosion in the cost of production because of what we talked about earlier today with the global hash wars now hitting a fast pace. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense in both ways and both points are valid. But what's being missed here is that the global hash war is now pushing up the cost of production significantly, very much significantly. The cost of production right now, BFV, you can go check it out. I have it around $300,000. That's not the OPEX cost of production or the electrical cost of production. Those are different metrics. Miners love to talk about their electrical cost of production because it makes it seem like, hey, we have solar power and it cost us $25,000 to mine a Bitcoin. Yeah, but you had to spend $100 million to tap into the solar power. So you have to include capital expenditures and operational expenditures to understand what the cost of production is. And that's what you're looking at right there. So yeah, Opti, we could have a diminishing premium. Maybe you're only at a 50% premium this time or a 90% premium, but you're talking about relative to over $300,000. So that same 100, and remember the last cycle, we had the China mining ban. That China mining ban threw a whole wrench in the entire cycle. And what happened to the cost of production during that China mining ban, as the miners were forced to sell, they sold that price from above 60 all the way down to 30 at the cost of production to raise that capital to relocate. Once they relocated, price went right back up because the miners are the forced sellers. So in this time, the miners are forced sellers, the hodlers are hodling, but the global hash wars are pushing up we have significant amount of hash rate. Bitcoin's hash rate is growing at an exponential rate. And the difficulty adjustment is that engineered money component that a lot of people don't take the time to look into, but it's specifically designed for this reason. Satoshi taught this. This isn't CJ's opinion. I learned this from Satoshi's material. And I have posts about that on my Twitter in my highlights. You can go check it out. The actual quotes from Satoshi talking about the natural rules of economics in a commodity cycle. The cost of something always gravitates towards the price. And Bitcoin's difficulty adjustment is designed to push the cost of production towards the price. This is number go up technology. And then when the price comes below the cost of production, there's an added element, which is the difficulty can go negative. And then that makes the cost of production go down so that the producers can have a chance at being profitable again, which is a sustainability element. So this, Bitcoin, I'd like to say, Nico, in the beginning of the episode, you said this is the best money. I'd like to put forth the thing that Bitcoin is the first money. We've used what could work as money for a long time. And this is the first time we actually have real money, absolute digital scarcity, and the difficulty adjustment, which takes care of the commodity, supporting the system through the commodity cycle. All of these things come together and plug in perfectly with what we talked today, because difficulty is going up, cost of production is going up, the global hash wars are going to make that accelerate, the lies from the Democrats are going to make that adoption accelerate. So we have demand going up for a value that's needed, because even in the UK, you can't repost a tweet without getting arrested. What happens when you start getting arrested because Bitcoin's number go up technology? Well, you can't say that, because that's like saying fiat is number go down technology. Uh-oh. I think we figured something out. We have to silence these people. That's where we're going right now. Bitcoin 100%. Is economic freedom based on the true rules and laws of the economy. One last thing. Thank you guys for letting me rant on this, but I got one last thing to hammer home because it's just bullshit. These people tell you that inflation is economic growth. And this goes back to, Nico, what you said earlier. They change the words. They change the definitions and meaning of words. In a strong economy, prices go up temporarily, because the increase in demand pushes the prices up. But an increase of demand barely moves the cost of production, right? So for a producer, when they're facing inflationary price pressures, the cost of production is going up too, because the devaluation of the dollar, the dilution of the dollar, forces all prices to go up, cost of production and front end facing price. But a strong economy just forces the front end facing price to go up. What that does is it creates profit for the producer. And then producers can take that profit and reinvest in expanding supply. And when they expand supply, I like to use the water bottle example. If you make 1 million water bottles, it might cost you 10 cents per water bottle. But if your company did really good and sold all those water bottles and you made a good profit and you could push the price up, you can reinvest that profit to making 10 million water bottles, and it might only cost you 6 cents. So you could actually lower the front end price and your profit margin would still be larger. But because you have a lower front end price, a lower price means greater demand. So a true healthy economy temporarily creates higher prices, but that enables producers to reinvest in expanding supply, reducing the marginal cost of production, lowering the front end price while maintaining or even growing profitability, which then leads to greater consumption and greater production. That's the definition of a strong economy. This inflation that they're trying to, that they're forcing on us from raiding the piggy bank, what happens is inflation doesn't just push up the front end price, it also pushes up the producer's cost of production. So if the producer doesn't raise the front end price, they are less profitable. They're less. That's why price to sales and price to earnings ratios are so off the charts, because we are in an inflationary environment where companies become less and less profitable because the cost of production goes up just as much as the front end facing price. There's no profits to reinvest. And then if the company doesn't raise the price, their margins shrink. So they're forced to raise the price. They have spun this idea, and they have really modern monetary theory and all of the lies and definition changes of that line of thinking is a travesty to humanity, because now people don't even have a basic understanding of economics. And Jeff Booth does a great job of explaining this. In a real strong economy, yeah, prices might go up temporarily, but in the long term, they come down. And that's how a strong economy adds more demand. It's more demand because profitable producers can lower prices, which allows more people to participate. And when more people can participate, their quality of life and standard of living is increasing. That's the opposite of what we're seeing right now. Everybody's quality of life and standard of living is decreasing.
Unless you're on a Bitcoin standard, then it tells you the truth.
Unless you're on a Bitcoin standard. And that's why Bitcoiners are happy. And that's why Bitcoiners are excited. Everybody who's stuck on this fiat standard, they're making more money, but they're buying less stuff. So they're not happy. You guys, you tell me, have you noticed that the services industry here in the United States is lower? Like the quality of service
Everything.
that you get?
It's not even services. It's the quality of products. Like you see them because they're forced to cut corners and they want to keep the price roughly the same. So it degrades the products. This affects food. It affects essentially like many assets of life, because people have to understand like money is the base layer of society, plays an instrumental role in the human condition and are just our daily lives. And if that system is based on theft, it's corrupt, it's fundamentally corrupted to the core, there are many things that go down from that. I'm glad that you brought up Jeff Booth, because Jeff Booth is making the case. And guys, connect the dots. We want you guys to connect the dots on the show. It's just, if you just have single data points, they mean nothing. CJ brought up the UK censorship. Jeff Booth was bringing up like, look, in a system based on theft, they have to coerce the narrative. If they don't coerce you into believing a shared narrative, then you have and this is why we cover freedom of speech, because it's our tool to really fight this. If you don't have that, then all of a sudden things like, why does money need to steal from me in order to function? Bitcoin is better money. Those words are very dangerous to what they're doing today. And this is why we prepare you guys. We get you guys in the game, your head in the game, to really understand what is happening right now. And we take a more lighthearted approach, but this is the separation of money and state. This is a pivotal moment in human history. And CJ, you laid out the case. And it reminds me of Solzhenitsyn's quote. You know, they're lying. We know they're lying. They know we know we're lying. And they're lying anyways. Right? It's very dystopian. It's very communist. I'm going to keep saying that word. We took it out of the bag on this week's show, but I'm going to keep saying it. And that's really what it is. What type of future do you want to live? Do you want to live in a Bitcoin powered capitalist society, or do you want to live in a central bank digital currency powered communist society? Because those are really the two futures ahead of you. It's really Bitcoin or slavery. And wake up and get involved, because
it hits you even harder when you have a family, right, Nico?
Yeah.
I remember seeing you at Bitcoin Naples. Congratulations. I bought
a lot of guns and I bought a lot of Bitcoin after that.
That's right. Yeah. Bitcoin bullets and a Bible. That's what we need. And I'll tell you, what the really sad part about this is the United States is being blocked together with North Korea and Iran with our stance toward this industry. So the rest of the world is adopting this technology. And something that we're working on at People's Reserve is a principal protected note that we call a Bitcoin bond. Now, what's so exciting about this product is that we're already actually talking to a few potential sovereign issuers. So people don't understand how fast this marketplace is moving, because where we're going, everything I just told you about interest rates, why that's important is because the lenders in the marketplace are not going to accept larger real negative interest rates. So even with interest rates right now at 5% and inflation at 10%, you subtract inflation from the risk-free rate, and that gives you the real rate of return. It's your rate of return based in terms of purchasing power. So yeah, you might be getting 5% nominal on your treasuries, but when prices are 10% at the end of the year, you're still buying 5% less stuff. So it's real rates that matter for money managers whose job is not to just protect the nominal value and trick their clients, but to truly preserve purchasing power through time. And what's going to happen is when interest rates go back down and inflation goes back up, real interest rates are going to be the most negative that they've ever been, which means lenders are not going to be interested in lending money in order to get back less purchasing power. It's just even insurance company models are going to break down, because you can't, if there's a claim in the future because of a hurricane, the cost to fix that hurricane is going to be significantly more than the negative return of purchasing power you received on everybody's payments that you kept in US treasuries. So we approach this problem saying, you know what? These debt derivatives are a broken market, and we can integrate Bitcoin into this marketplace. And when you integrate Bitcoin into the marketplace, it actually creates the yield on our principal protected note. So you would lend money to the issuer. The issuer's note would mature and give you back your principal. So if you invested $1 million at the end of the 5 years, you get $1 million back. What's left over? The Bitcoin that was bought. So the performance of Bitcoin, the best performing asset in the world, is what produces the yield on the note. And that's what countries and companies and states and cities are going to need to do. They're going to need to integrate Bitcoin into their debt issuance, or else nobody's going to want to buy their debt. And if nobody wants to buy your debt, especially if you're a country, the only thing you can do is quantitative easing. The only thing you can do is print money and buy your own debt. And that leads to hyperinflation. So we are now at that point in the cycle where, yes, we need to be political. Yes, we need to be involved in finance. Yes, we need to get involved more than we ever had before. Because if we don't integrate Bitcoin, when other countries start to integrate Bitcoin, USA will go just like it has in education. At one point, it was a top level education. Now our education system sucks. Well, we are the top financialized economy in the world. If we don't integrate the most hard first form of money, the first discovery of money, complete digital scarcity guaranteed through a decentralized money protocol, if we don't adopt the reserve asset of the internet economy, an economy that's greater than any one economy or team of countries, we will lose. And our ranking in the financialization portion of the world will drop, and our quality of life and standard of living will be to the point where I'm sure many Bitcoiners will leave this country. So if you want a future for your children in freedom and with freedom of speech based on the Republic of the United States and the true Constitution of the United States, we need to be more active now than we've ever been. And I'm apolitical, but now's the time to act for the sake of your children, to make sure that we maintain our leadership in the world. Because if we don't adopt Bitcoin and other countries do, we will fall to irrelevance faster than anybody could really imagine.
Amen, man. Beautifully said. Well, dude, this was the Friday show. We try to bring you guys the hot fire.
Before Nico wraps this up, everyone in the chat's like, how come no one knows CJ? And I'm like, this is why we got him on the live show, so more of you guys can get exposure to this kind of message. This is what the point of the show is about, is getting the good signal out there so more people know what's actually going on. So kudos to you, CJ. I'm guessing everyone in the chat's going to have to rewatch that rant so that they can actually digest everything you said, but absolutely destroyed it, dude.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, dude, so much signal on today's episode. Thank you so much for coming on. Love to have you back on again in the near future, as you know, the election season continues to heat up and things get crazy. And keep on kicking ass, man. Just incredible work, just discovering the lies, really.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on this show. You guys are doing what for this industry, what needs to be done. And where else can you get tomorrow's news today?
Let's go. Actually, man. CJ, plug where people can find you for the audio listeners, and then let's roll this one out.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. My name on the screen there is actually my handle for Twitter and YouTube. Very active on X. You can dive into my highlights and you can DM me. I'll do my best to help everybody get to where they need to be prepared for what's coming.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, this was the Friday show for August 9th, 2024. I'm your host, Nico, my co-host, Optimus Fields, and of course, our guest for today, CJ, bringing the hot fire. If you guys enjoyed today's show, make sure to smash that like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value. And guys, unplug, enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you Monday, 12:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another episode of Simply Bitcoin Live, Bitcoin or Slavery.
Episode was brought to you by bitcoinwell.com, on a mission to enable independence.